There is a kind of person who walks into a room and immediately sees the one thing that's slightly wrong: the frame hanging a degree out of level, the pattern in the floor tile that breaks every ninth square, the small inconsistency nobody else even registers. Maybe that person is you. Maybe it's someone you love, and you've spent years watching them lock onto a detail with a focus so complete the rest of the world seems to fall away. For a long time, that kind of mind has been treated as something to manage, a quirk, a difficulty, a condition with a name and a diagnosis. But that focus, that hunger for pattern and precision, is not a modern invention. It is one of the oldest and most valuable minds our species has ever produced. And there is a real argument, grounded in archaeology and cognitive science, that the tools which let humanity survive at all were built by minds that worked exactly like that. This is the story of how the ancient world was shaped by the people who could not stop noticing. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Here is what most of us were taught, and it's a fair place to start. Survival, we assume, went to the strong and the social, the fast runners, the people who could charm a group and hold it together, generalists who could turn their hand to anything. And autism, in that same story, is something recent, a condition of the modern age, of screens and clinics and a world moving too fast for certain brains to keep pace. There's a grain of truth in it. Human survival did depend on cooperation, and social skill mattered enormously. But that story cannot explain the objects our ancestors actually left in the ground, because the tools that kept early humans alive carry the fingerprints of a very particular kind of mind, one built for pattern, repetition, and relentless precision. Start with the hand axe. More than 1.5 million years ago, our ancestor Homo erectus began shaping a stone tool archaeologists call the Acheulean hand axe. A teardrop worked on both faces, symmetrical from tip to base. What makes it remarkable is not any single example. It is that the same balanced shape appears again and again across more than 1 million years, from southern Africa to India to the edge of Europe. Different continents, different climates, the same exact template, held in the mind and reproduced by hand across thousands of generations. Making one is far harder than it looks. Nicholas Toth and Kathy Schick, who run the Stone Age Institute in Indiana, have spent decades teaching people to knap stone the ancient way. It takes hundreds of hours to become skilled. Every strike has to be planned. Misread the stone by a few degrees and the whole piece shatters in your hand. Dietrich Stout, an archaeologist at Emory University, went further. He put modern volunteers in a brain scanner and had them learn this craft. The scans showed that skilled toolmaking activates networks deep in the brain tied to precise sequencing and long-range planning, some of the same circuitry behind complex thought and language. Here is what that means for you. The mind that can lock onto one object for hours, tracking every angle, unwilling to accept a single flaw, was not a burden on early humans. It was the engine of their survival. The same signature turns up later and sharper. At Blombos Cave on the coast of South Africa, someone roughly 75,000 years ago engraved a piece of ochre with a careful cross-hatched pattern, geometric and deliberate. It is one of the oldest designs a human hand ever made, the mark of a brain that saw the world in structure and could not rest until that structure was set down. And it went beyond the stone itself. At Sibutu Cave, further along the same South African coast, the archaeologist Lynn Wadley studied how ancient people fixed sharp stone points onto wooden shafts around 70,000 years ago. The glue itself was a kind of recipe. Plant gum blended with red ochre, sometimes wax or fat, mixed in careful proportions and heated to exactly the right consistency. Too wet and the joint slipped. Too dry and it cracked on the first hard impact. Getting the blend right even meant controlling fire, warming the mixture without scorching it, a step that was easy to ruin. Wadley's argument is that holding all of those variables in your head at once, adjusting each against the others, demands real mental control, abstract thinking, careful sequencing, the same pull to get every step exactly right, this time turned toward a process rather than a shape. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. Something specific was happening inside those minds. Simon Baron-Cohen, who directs the Autism Research Center at Cambridge, has spent his career on this question. And in his book, The Pattern Seekers, he lays out an idea worth sitting with. He argues the human brain carries a kind of engine he calls the systemizing mechanism. It runs on a simple loop. If I do this, and I change that, then this happens. It is the drive to find the rule underneath the noise, to test it, and to refine it until it works every time. That loop is the root of invention. It is how a person works out that this angle of strike flakes the stone cleanly, and that one does not. And Baron Cohen's central point is that the systemizing engine runs hottest in autistic minds. The same attention to detail, the same pull toward pattern and system, and a willingness to do one thing over and over until it is exactly right. In a modern classroom or an open-plan office, that wiring can feel like a mismatch. Kneeling over a core of flint 90,000 years ago, it was the most useful mind in the group, the person who noticed what everyone else walked past, who cared about the tiny difference, who would not stop until the edge was perfect, made the blade that fed a family through the winter. None of this means the specialist worked alone, or that a group could have run on that mind by itself. A band of people who all wanted to sit and perfect a blade would have starved. What kept everyone alive was the mix. The socially fluent members read moods, settled disputes, and held the group together. The specialist read the stone, the seasons, the small differences that decided whether a tool worked or failed. One kind of attention pointed outward at people, the other pointed inward at systems. A group that carried both could do things a group with only one never could. That balance is easy to miss today, when we tend to rank minds on a single scale and call one type normal. For most of human history, there was no single scale. There was a task, and there was the mind best shaped to meet it. Here is the part that changes how the whole thing feels. Penny Spickens, an archaeologist at the University of York, studies how early human groups treated people who were different. Her argument is that somewhere in our deep past, communities began to make room for minds that worked in unusual ways. The person who could hold an entire landscape of resources in memory, the one who knew every plant, every season, every fault line in a piece of stone. Groups that valued those specialists, that fed and protected them, gained an edge that groups without them did not have. Read that again slowly, because it reverses the usual story. The specialist did not depend on the group's goodwill. The group depended on the specialist. For tens of thousands of years, the trait we now sometimes treat as a problem to be corrected was a trait a community could not afford to lose. The focus, the precision, the deep and narrow attention were the marks of a mind doing exactly what human minds, at their most inventive, were built to do. So think again about that person who walks into a room and sees the one thing that's slightly off. The frame a degree out of level. The pattern that breaks on the ninth tile. The detail everyone else glides straight past. Maybe you've watched that person struggle in a world that rewards speed and small talk over depth and care. Maybe that person is you, and you have wondered why your attention works the way it does. This is the part worth holding on to. That mind is not a flaw for the world to work around. It is ancient, one of the oldest tools our species ever had, older than farming, older than writing, older than the wheel. Somewhere far back, a mind exactly like that one picked up a stone, saw the shape waiting inside it, and would not stop until it was perfect. The rest of us are still here because of it. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.